You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website at michigansportstruth.weebly.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, Google Play on its podcast mobile app, and Spotify. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them.
And episode 335 of the Week in Review is in session. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Buck Gino and Ed Smith on Facebook Messenger. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Buck Gino on Twitter at BuckGino with the third 3 eyes for Roman numerals. Got a couple big talking points to talk about, and then we'll recap some football, including the Lions upsetting the Patriots. First off, got a big topic to talk about here, and let's kick this off.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this special report.
There was an article on 9/11, 13 days prior to this podcast, this episode, that was talking about the possibility of Red Wings general manager Ken Holland being fired next calendar year and being replaced by, of all people, STEVE YZERMAN.
Holy jumping!
Careful what you wish for.
Now, Ken Holland has an extension for 2 years, and STEVE YZERMAN is in the last year of his contract. Yeah, someone's phone has a lot of interference. Somebody better fix that, please. Yeah, thank you. But this is a very big deal between Ken Holland and STEVE YZERMAN. Chris Ilitch, I did not know had that consideration. I was first told by my my radio buddy Jeremy Wood, the engineer and program and board operator at WMLM 1520 AM in Alma, while calling play-by-play for Merrill and Breckenridge last Friday, and that's I didn't know this was real, and I was shocked. So this the details could be that Holland may either already be in the two-year extension, or the extension may be nullified, and then YZERMAN could come home to Detroit and replace Holland. So this is a very big deal. Again, this is very, very shocking. So, Ed, we're going to start with you this time. Well, as usual, what do you make of this?
Well, before upon hearing about this update, you always get the general consensus or the belief of the possibility of YZERMAN trying to coming back to run the Red Wings would be a low possibility due to the perceived notion that he and Chris Ilitch just couldn't quite get along for some reason that to me is not entirely clear. I don't know why. But it was obviously mentioned before by Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag about Heisman and Chris Ilitch being at odds with each other, and that, above all else, would trump the possibility or any chances of Heisman coming back to be any type of front office role for the Wings. But when you hear, first the nugget dropping of Heisman, not, making his intentions known, he is returning to his home in the Metro Detroit area. It could be a number of things, but it did provide some type of mystery and intrigue. And then we add into the fact of this apparent rumor that you yourself, Taylor, have gotten now within the past week or so. Of the usual saying, where wherever there's smoke, there is some fire. So whatever fire, whatever blaze or inferno that this leads to down the road, it'll be quite interesting to see how it all fizzles out. But I don't want to get my hopes too high in terms of the dream scenario that we all would love to see. Some other things have got to fall in the right place, such as, when Chris Ellis himself was asked to comment on the situation of Heisman stepping down from the Lightning, he just flat out said, I'm not, there's league rules and standards that permit me from commenting on this. I'm paraphrasing, but that's exactly the gist of what he said. And that's kind of a good reason, because Chris Ilitch, regarding his status and ownership with the Red Wings, was able to make a comment that gave sort of any type of hint or indication that he might be going after Heisman as soon as his Lightning contract is up, would scream charges of tampering, and the Wings do not need that at all. So I'm not surprised by Chris Ilitch giving his statement in that regard. Time is still yet to be told, especially, this first we got to see how the season plays out and see how everything goes from there, between not just for Heisman, but how the Lightning do and how the Wings do, and whether or not there's any truth to the rumor that, Holland won't be allowed to finish out his last year. So there's still a to be determined on that regard, that issue.
Yeah, but all of it's only speculation for now. But Buck, your say on this one too.
Well, you just put it right on the head. It's speculation. So regardless of what we know or don't know, it's not the full story. And the facts are that we know so far, Steve Yzerman has not left Tampa Bay, the organization. He's still under contract to them. He would have to be released from that contract and also have permission to talk to Detroit, which those type of things usually go through the league office, just as a reporting measure so that they can say, that they have a record of it. That hasn't been filed, or that hasn't been made clear that has indeed happened. So if Steve Yzerman is going to talk to the Red Wings, he would be potentially in violation of his contract. And if the Red Wings were found to have been tampering with Steve Yzerman, having those conversations, they could be penalized, draft picks, money, or some combination thereof. So for all these speculation, all these things about back channel deals and people talking about who is talking to who, I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it. And the reason I say that is because, yes, I'd love for Ken Holland not to be the general manager of the Red Wings. I'd love for Steve Yzerman to try his hand at rebuilding a franchise that he called home for his entire NHL career. But the fact remains is there's a lot of obstacles and a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through before he's able to do that. And if he's willing or desires to do that, still remains to be seen, because everybody thinks that just because he's coming back home to Detroit automatically means he's going to take the job next year after his contract expires, or maybe prior to. Some things to think about. Number one, Ken Holland's got a 2-year extension. Number two, Steve Yzerman still has a year left on his contract. If he chooses to take the job in season, which is highly unlikely, Detroit would probably be forced to give Tampa Bay some compensation. And that's not something you're going to do as a rebuilding team, because that's what you need is assets and draft picks. So why would you give those up to get a general manager that wants to rebuild the team? Secondly, Ken Holland is still under contract for 2 years. That doesn't mean he can't switch roles. So my feeling on all of it is that there's a lot of speculation, but for Ken Holland to be fired, it won't happen until after the season, because Steve Yzerman is still under contract with the Lightning. There's been no talks about him being released from that contract, him being bought out, any sort of compensation package between the Red Wings and the Lightning. And you would think at some point that if this was going to be the case, that he was going to take it over this year, that there would have been those talks. So my spider sense tells me that if anything happens, it'll be next year. Now, that doesn't mean that if he's moved to Detroit, he's not planning on, after his contract is over, coming to work for the Red Wings. That just means that he's going to have to wait. And I'm sure he's comfortable waiting, because a consultant's role really is just that. He is not going to be at the arena or at the team offices 24/7. He's going to be in Detroit, and he'll be making trips at the behest of the Lightning to do whatever he has to do in his consulting. And then after this year is over, the season is over, I should say, his contract will be up. So that's when the real speculation can begin, because this year Ken Holland's going to be the general manager. If he gets fired for some reason, the interim GM won't be Steve Yzerman unless they're really willing to give him compensation and draft picks. And compensation, what I mean by that is a form of cash. And we all know that Chris Hillich doesn't like to release that willingly or without a fight. So for a team like the Red Wings and an owner like Chris Hillich, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to do a lot of this, all these machinations right now. Now, that does not mean that there are feelings that are harbored by Yzerman or the organization and a willingness to have him back. It just means it's going to have to wait. So all the hubbub about Steve Yzerman moving back home, he's going to take the Red Wings job, it's premature. It's also understandable given the state of the franchise and the frustration that fans have felt for missing the playoffs for 2 straight years and what's sure to be a third coming up this season. And it's going to be really just a game of patience. We're going to have to wait till the end of the season to see what happens. Ken Holland's been linked to multiple jobs via rumor. Seattle and Vancouver are 2 of the spots. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility that he could leave. But again, he'll be leaving a year of a contract on the table with the Red Wings. I'm sure at a handsome salary. So there's a lot of things that have to fall before Steve Yzerman even steps foot in the Red Wings offices, whether it be a GM or a consultant for a year, whatever the title might be. Secondly, we all know that Ken Holland infamously denied Yzerman the chance to become the general manager in 2010 when he was asked to be bumped upstairs in favor of Yzerman. He deferred, and that triggered a chain reaction. Jim Nill left for the Dallas Stars. Steve Yzerman left for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And the rest is kind of history when you look at what happened to the franchise after that point. Severe drop-off in not only on the ice talent, but also talent development, talent evaluation. A lot of things happened after that point. So Ken Holland is inextricably linked to to not only the championships that the Detroit Red Wings have had, but also the downfall of that franchise. So it's hard to believe that they wouldn't welcome a change, but at the same time, there's a lot of factors that are in play here. So I think that with all the rumors that are going to be swirling and all the things that are going to be said, there's really not a lot of traction to be had until the season ends. That's when the rubber is going to meet the road, and we'll find out if this is indeed something that's going to happen. So it's fun. It's nice to read some of these things and what people think and have supposedly heard, but some people have said that Yzerman has some sort of handshake deal. I've heard that he's going to come and join the Red Wings. That would really be shocking to me, given the fact that Tampa Bay would be able to go and say that that's tampering, and they wouldn't really have a hard case to present. I just think that all of these things are happening, and everybody is so excited about it because I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people have wanted this to happen for a long time, a lot of us since 2010. But you just have to stay the course, and if Steve Yzerman is eventually going to become part of the Red Wings organization, whether it be the team president or GM role or a dual role similar to what Stan Van Gundy held with the Pistons. In terms of, I'm not saying that Steve Yzerman has become the coach because he's explicitly said that he doesn't want to do that, nor does he have the experience. It's just going to have to be a waiting game. And it's kind of hard because the Red Wings are in a bad spot right now. They're starting to be on the rise in terms of the talent that they're getting in the younger ranks. But they're still not going to be a good hockey team this year. They're going to struggle to be not last in their division. There's a lot of things that are going to be going on. So these rumors, all these sorts of speculation, they're good cannon fodder for the press and for clickbait and what you want to say. But until something actually happens, and I don't think that anything would happen before the season is ended, I really think that until we get towards the end of the season, there's not much to say about it other than there's a lot of people that are excited at the possibility. I just don't. There's so many things that happen between Steve Yzerman becoming the Red Wings general manager and where he's at now. There's just so much in there that they gotta, like I said, you're just going to have to wait. And it's going to be a long wait, and it may not even happen. And so these are the type of things that are going to fuel a fan base through a bad year. And if that helps you watch a couple more Red Wings games and hope that they're going to have Steve Yzerman as the GM, well, more power to you. I just think that a lot of this now, and I've said so before, it's speculation, and it's nice to think about, but it's too early in this process to say anything is definitive.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, Chris Ilitch is the owner, so that makes things a little harder. So we're going to get deeper into that later on in our episode, in our 5 questions segment. So if nothing else, we can move on to the Pistons here. All right.
Left sideline, 3, and he answers.
Pistons head coach Dwayne Casey, we just heard today, is allowing center Andre Drummond to shoot 3-pointers.
Holy jumping! Oh, man!
That's kind of a tall order because although Drummond has had a short history of hitting a couple threes, he shot 0% from 3-point range last year, all of last year, and I'm not really sure if that's a good idea. Ed, we'll start with you again.
Well, this is definitely a turn of events from what we originally saw from all those videos that Drummond posted on social media a few months ago of him, not just taking drills or shooting around, but actually legit practicing some situations where he was one-on-one dribbling against someone, then stepping back and then shooting a 3. And most times those would go in. Now, here I thought it was just a chance of someone letting on more than we all originally thought. Here I thought originally there might have been some type of training method to help him expand his jump shot to at least mid-level range. I didn't know it was going to be an indication it's going to be a full-on expansion beyond the 3-point line. But apparently Dwayne Casey wants to try that out. He wants to experiment with that. He knows and recognizes that in today's modern NBA, you're seeing more and more big men have to be more versatile. They can't be just straight up, get the ball back up to the post and get the rebound. No, you have to have an outside jump shot. Whether it is guys like Joel Embiid, whether it is guys like Anthony Towns, Kristaps Porzingis, Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, the list goes on and on. Kevin Love, for instance, you know what I mean? So today, you got to have a big man that can shoot. So while Blake Griffin is on the roster now, he just started to develop an outside shot of his own. It's still not quite up to par. So I guess in Dwayne Casey's mind, that means we got to expand on this a little bit more. So him apparently doing this for Drummond may be an indication that that's what he wants to do in terms of helping establish the identity of what this team wants to do, considering how the league is and is today. So, wonder how it's going to work out for them long term. It's still yet to be seen. We got to see how it looks in action first before we rush to judgment. But it is an interesting decision by Dwayne Casey in terms of probably seems unconventional from what we were all expecting him to do with his life. So, it's quite an interesting decision. I just can't wait to see how it all unfolds.
Yep. Buck?
If he's going to let him do it, I mean, that's different than scheming around and making a focal point of the offense. As Ed mentioned, there's a lot of big guys in the NBA now that can shoot from long distance, but at the same time, you have to be able to master the inside game for that to be really effective. There's very few guys that can park out by the three-point line that are considered centers or power forwards and be successful. And Andre Drummond, for all the time he's been in the league, he's been pretty milquetoast as far as an offensive force anywhere outside the paint. And it's great that he wants to add this aspect to his game. It gives him something extra that he can work on and that he can feature. But at the same time, it's one of those things where he hasn't really even shown me that he's can be what I would call a dominant post player. And for him to say, well, I want to shoot threes now, it's kind of hard to fathom because it's not really something that Detroit I would say necessarily needs. They've never been a great three-point shooting team. They've always been kind of middle of the road or below. If he wants to shoot threes, I guess we'll see how it works out. And if he's able to do so effectively without handicapping the rest of his game, the one thing I'll say is that he's typically been one of their better rebounders. And that's going to take away some offensive rebound opportunities. So when your big guy is drifting outside the paint or even shooting a mid-level jump shot, chances are he's not going to be able to get the rebound. And that's something that the Pistons really need to be effective is second chance points and being able to keep offensive possessions alive because they weren't an efficient offensive team last year. And I think that making your center a three-point shooter isn't really the way to go. I think that Dwayne Casey's kind of exploring the space, seeing what he has, trying to reinvent this Pistons offense from the Stan Van Gundy mold of having outside gunners and a one or two post players that can control the play from inside the paint. So I think this is, again, a lot of cannon fodder for the press, something to talk about, but at the same time, I'm not expecting Dwayne Casey to tell Andre Drummond to hoist up 200 threes this season. I think this is more of just another aspect of his game that he might be able to utilize. And in a new system, you have to be open to adjustment and change, and this may be one of them. So we'll see how this goes. Dwayne Casey's coming into a situation where he's got to kind of reinvent the wheel when it comes to their offense because they just kind of have a lot of mismatched pieces. They don't have they have a true point guard in the sense that Reggie Jackson is that guy, but when they missed him last year due to injury, the offense really was disjointed, and it was not something that you thought that was fixed, but just by moving somebody out to the three-point line that doesn't normally shoot three-pointers and trying to stretch the defense. So this is kind of another wait-and-see thing. If he is mildly successful at it, I mean, even if he's shooting 25%, which is not a great percentage by any stretch of the imagination, but the threat is there, that can create some other opportunities. And maybe this is one of those smokescreen things that becomes, maybe not the norm, but something that they can showcase at times and force the defenses to react to it. That could be one of these things where Dwayne Casey's really not intent again on letting Andre Drummond just bomb away from three if he can't get a look inside. Having that said, all options are kind of on the table. because the Pistons need something to jumpstart that offense. I don't think Andre Drummond shooting triples is going to be the magic key. That said, and this could be one of the facets of a greater plan that Dwayne Casey has to try to get this Pistons offense on track, get them to be a more dominant force, and try to improve their overall offensive efficiency.
Yeah. So we're going to see what Andre Drummond does when the Pistons tip off their season. So we're going to transition to college football unless any of you have anything else to add. No? Okay.
Touchdown, Michigan!
Another rout win for the Michigan Wolverines, 56-10 over the lowly Nebraska Cornhuskers. And now the Wolverines are ranked 14th in the AP poll. But, man, Mason, the touchdown hat trick. Nebraska going into that game won at least one, maybe two against very easy teams, but they got schooled by the Michigan Wolverines. Ed, you've got the analysis. Take it away.
Absolutely. This was the Big Ten opener for Michigan. And again, even though it was the opener of the conference schedule, it was still a continuation of an easygoing schedule where Michigan got a chance to flex their muscle, get some basically glorified scrimmage time in, and help implement ways that their offensive line can continue to get better, which in turn will help their offense as a whole get better to complement their amazing defense. We'll get to the offense in a second, but first, another great display of defensive domination. You notice if you were paying attention, the Viper, they call it on the telecast, the Viper linebacker spot. Originally, it was established for Jordan with Jabril Peppers a couple of years back. Now, with Jabril Peppers now gone, it's being filled in the role of Jordan Glasgow. Now, I don't know if he is of any relation to Graham Glasgow. Wouldn't surprise me. You know how family tends to do things in college. Like, for instance, the Bola family, and then at MSU. He still does a terrific job with his pursuit of the ball, how he gets at things. He's never a good complementary addition to guys to just get after it. In addition to Chase Winovich or Devin Bush, for example. You have great pass rushers such as Rashawn Gary out there as well. And terrific secondary with guys like Metellus and among others being featured, getting interceptions, breaking up plays, showing mad press coverage. And when you have a front seven that's able to get at the quarterback and stop the run and makes your secondary, which leaves you no worries with the secondary, but knowing that you have good players as well is quite satisfying to watch. They do have some things to work out on, such as penalties that might extend plays or boneheaded decisions that leads to targeting calls. We saw, again, how the penalties part led to their downfall against Notre Dame. Thankfully, they've cleaned up on that in a sense, but they still got to get better in the targeting department. Can't have that happen to you in a big game where you lose an important player for the rest of that game. It would surely lead to disaster. So they got to work on that, but still, great job by the defense. Now, as for the offense, there's a lot of variables here. Granda Higdon, as you know, their starting running back, he did not play at all last week against SMU. Chris Evans and Drew Oliver. Drew Oliver or Drew Hudson? What was his name again?
Hudson.
Yeah, Drew Hudson. He got the load along with Chris Evans to replace Higdon. Now, with Chris Evans being gimped up this week, it was Higdon's turn to return, and he did so with a vengeance. He had a couple of touchdowns, big runs, showing a lot of speed, as well as great physical impact as well, whether it be lowering the boom on some runs, or showcasing his strength on some pass blocking ability. Ron Higdon was incredibly impressive in his return to action list last Saturday, and shows what a vital piece he is to this Michigan offense. What also appears to be now become another vital important piece of the Michigan offense is the fullback, Ben Mason, who is starting to become into the role that I once associated with the likes of Khalid Hill, whereas you down to a short yardage situation or a goal line situation where you need to get a touchdown, and it's at the big fella, he'll automatically get it in for you. Khalid Hill did that, number 80, a couple years ago, the big guy, and then now it seems that Ben Mason has been his spiritual successor in that role. The way he was being able to get those yardage situations and touchdowns at ease was impressive and even almost embarrassing when you consider how much his own individual production almost equaled what the entire Nebraska offense had. Quite astonishing. So as for the offense itself, I do like how you're implementing more zone blocking instead of your usual 3 yards in the cloud of dust. You're implementing more of interesting scheme zone blocking with shotgun handoffs, as well as, you're using unbalanced sets to get your running to the weak side. So it's a good way to throw off teams and help establish better seals and better alleys for your running backs to run through. So, it's still work in progress. You want to make sure that they're all set in tune before they get to the big dogs of their schedule. But it's nice to see how everything is developing now. It was interesting of note to see how, when you consider the fact that there's history of some sort between Jim Harbaugh and Scott Frost, whether it be going back to Scott Frost's days playing for Nebraska, and of course the infamous or famous year of 1997 with the split national championship. Scott Frost, I'm sure, loving to rub it in everyone, give his strong opinion of it every once in a while, every chance he got, to indicate that Nebraska was the more deserving team of that whole national championship. So I'm sure that stung a chord with some Michigan fans around this area. And then, of course, other comments that Frost made, such as, the teams he coaches will be able to out-hit teams like Michigan. He was real specific in mentioning Michigan as well. And now with him being a coach in the conference, of course, it just added more fuel to the fire. It's worth of note that the last time that Harbaugh and Frost met on the football field, it was, I think, 2016, was Michigan just got UCF all over the football field. And so, here we are again in 2018. Scott Frost in his first year coaching with Nebraska. It's been an absolute brutal start. You had 0-2 start. You lose to Troy of all teams, and now you get just completely ragdolled and dismantled all across the football field in this one. So, the fact that you had Harbaugh having his team going for 4th and 1 deep passes and 4th and 1 runs when they're already up by 3 possessions or more, still early in the first half. The fact that in the first half now of games where a Jim Harbaugh coach team faced Scott Frost coach team, the Wolverines have outscored those specific teams, a combined score of 73-7. It was a stat I heard on 97.1 the other day, and I couldn't believe it, but it is true. So when you take that into consideration, that must mean that Harbaugh might have had some type of ill will towards Frost, amongst other things. So, despite all of that, great, impressive win, smashing win, and with more, with the Northwestern coming up, that should be an absolute gimme. Northwestern does not look good at all this year. It would be a good chance. I'm not going to give away the whole entire score yet, but we got the picks coming up. But, as this schedule goes along, the way Michigan looks, I wouldn't be surprised if their only remaining tough game before Ohio State is Penn State. And they got that one at home because Wisconsin does not look that good. Michigan State looks more beatable week by week. They're still a good team, but still that matchup coming up in October does not fear me at all the way it did earlier in the offseason when I saw it on the schedule. And really the only hurdle I see for this team getting to 10 wins before the OSU game would be Penn State. That's about it. So there's definitely some good things on the horizon for this Michigan team, and they got never a chance to showcase how much better they've gotten before the meat and potatoes of the schedule begins, when they have a nice layup coming up against Northwestern.
Buck?
Well, it's quite apparent that Nebraska, under Scott Frost, has a lot of work to do. The schemes that they were running on the Frost offensive side, you could tell that they're woefully ill-equipped to run that with the current personnel they have, as evidenced by Michigan's defensive dominance. You have a quarterback who's coming off of injury, and Michigan got after him early and often. I think the defense was ready for that type of performance. Offensively, you're playing a Nebraska team that had a hard time stopping Troy in Colorado. So you would expect Michigan to be able to impose its will offensively. This one kind of went down the line that we all thought it would. We didn't think the score would be as bad as it ended up. But we did predict that Michigan should be able to win this game relatively easily. And that's what exactly happened. Actually, more than relatively easy. It was very easy for them. I think that you can take some positives away from this. As Ed talked about Ben Mason and his ability to cash in on short yardage situations, which Michigan has struggled with at times when you're talking about red zone offense. Nebraska was not a worthy opponent. It's a Big Ten game, and I get it, but that's a team that is currently in a big transition. They've endured some hard times with the departure of Pelini, and Mike Riley did not steer them in the right direction, so that's why they went with Scott Frost. It's going to take him some time to get that program back up to snuff, especially with the offensive philosophy that he brings. I think in a couple of years they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in that Big Ten West. But this is not the year for that. And it's quite apparent that they're just going to have a struggle this year. And you kind of get that honeymoon period as a first-year coach, especially somebody who's beloved in Nebraska as Scott Frost is. Michigan did exactly what they wanted to do. And as Ed talked about, they're starting to show a couple more concepts, the zone blocking, that is now starting to permeate their run game a little bit more. Defensively, you talked about the dominance that they had. The one, I would say, down note for Michigan, Khaleke Hudson, who was ineligible due to his targeting penalty last week because of that ejection, came into the second half and then got ejected again for targeting. So that's something that's an issue because Khaleke Hudson has to be on the field when you're playing some of the elite teams in the Big Ten for you to be successful on defense. Devin Bush is a monster. Jordan Glasgow, the brother of Ryan and Graham Glasgow, former Wolverines, was able to showcase his skills. But those are guys, like I said, Khaleke Hudson has to be on the field for you to be successful against the likes of Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin. Those are the type of guys that you need to make plays because they're going to have schemes to try to take Devin Bush out of his game. They're going to have schemes to double down on Rashawn Gary. They're going to have ways to get around that. And what you can do as a defense, if you have Khaleke Hudson on the field, is kind of make it a pick your poison. Are you going to try to go with power football and attack that front seven? Are you going to try to get out wide like Nebraska did so many times in a futile effort and get outside the numbers and try to get away from the likes of Devin Bush and Khaleke Hudson and Jordan Glasgow? Those are the type of things that you've got to be aware of when you're playing the better teams. This is a game that really, I think, for Michigan was supposed to be a win. They did some things that were nice to look at, that are fun for Michigan fans. But as I've stated before, the real schedule does not start until they play Wisconsin. They'll have Northwestern this week upcoming. That should be another layup game for them. It is on the road. And anytime you're playing a Big Ten road game, regardless of the opponent, that's always something that you have to be aware of in terms of, this is not a home game for them. They'll be playing in a hostile environment, as hostile as Ryan Field can be with a bad team, I guess. So I think that for Michigan, it's a nice win. It's fun for the fans. But overall, it doesn't show us a whole lot about what this team is capable of because they're not playing an elite team. And when they're playing a good team is what Michigan fans, at least I would say, a lot of Michigan fans are looking for. They're not looking for you to beat up Nebraska. That's all fine and good, but beating Michigan State, beating Ohio State, beating Wisconsin, beating Penn State, those are the type of games that Michigan fans want to see. And until we get to that part of the schedule, you can only play the games that they put in front of you. And this is just another example of that. So Nebraska, a wounded throws of the big house got ragged out all over the field as it was predicted, and they move on from there. They just have to take each game and make an improvement, and I think that's what we're seeing now. And like I said, this group reminds me a lot of Harbaugh's first year, more than any other, simply because they have elite players. They brought in a quarterback as a transfer who's learning the offense as he goes, and they're steadily trying to improve upon each week. And I think that they've been able to do that. And that's what you look for as a football team, progress when you're playing the teams that you should be, and also the ability to get ready for the teams that are going to be your arch enemies and the obstacles that are going to be in your way to a college football playoff berth, a conference championship, whatever the goals might be. So it was nice to see Michigan get this win, but at the same time, in my register, it's something that can be filed and put away, because the good teams like Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, and Wisconsin, they're not going to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage like they did against Nebraska. It's going to be more like the Notre Dame game where they struggled offensively because they couldn't control that line of scrimmage, and they need to be able to do that.
Right. Michigan at Northwestern Saturday at 4:30 on Fox. On Fox 2 WJBK in Detroit, and Fox 17 West Michigan, Fox 47 in Lansing, and Fox Local 32 in Cadillac, WFQX in Cadillac, and WFUP in Vanderbilt. WFQX is also located in Traverse City. So, transitioning to Michigan State football.
Touchdown, MSU!
The Spartans jumped out to a surprising 14-0 lead, and they kept the lead all along. Indiana kept it close. The Spartans made some critical mistakes, but they scored an insurance touchdown from I don't know. I forgot what his name was, but the number 8 guy, 75-yard kick return or something like that, a 75-yard touchdown, and that appeared to put the icing on the cake as they beat the Indiana Hoosiers at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington, Indiana, 35-21, and the Spartans, with that win, earned the 21 spot in the AP poll. Ed, we'll start with you again with the analysis.
Well, for MSU, remember this is their first game off their bye week after the disappointing game in Arizona State, so they needed to have a much better start and a much better going. And they most certainly did by scoring 21 points in the first half, highlighted, of course, by Shakur Brown's 9-yard pick six that really turned the tide, set the tone for what this game would become. They even had a good, they got the lead up to 21, but I didn't like how he seemingly took their foot off the pedal, allowed Indiana to crawl back in. Because remember, before that put-away touchdown by Jalen Naylor, by the way, that's whose name you're looking for. Jalen Naylor, great. No problem. Before that, that 75-yard jet sweep was the icing on the cake. That was still a one-possession game, and if Indiana had gotten one more defensive stop, they would have had a chance to tie the game. So that stuff like that still worried me. It was good to see D'Antonio have more, I guess you could say, open up the playbook to an extent, but at least pulling out some bags of tricks. Some old tricks that we haven't seen in a while from him, such as fake field goals. One of those went for a touchdown. And if you look at the final score of the game, they needed that touchdown in a big way. And also the jet sweep that led, again, another big touchdown that proved to be the difference in this game, which came off of those two specific plays, that ball trickeration. So it was good to see that D'Antonio and or Warner came with an agreement or understanding, like, hey, can't keep doing the same tried and true method that's gotten us nothing the past couple of years. So let's switch it up, see what happens, and it'll be something we can use to build upon for next year's game. So it was good to see some type of established way of scheming the game a little bit better win for them there. I liked how Brian Lewerke looked there. He looked more loose. He's white. I can definitely understand why he was seen by some as a potential dark horse Heisman candidate because of how, not just how important he is to the team, but how well he moves and performs and plays in this system. He's the perfect player for this system. It's not flashy, but it's still very much productive, gets the job done, and it's very reliable and dependent. It wouldn't surprise me if Lewerke is drafted by a team in the upcoming draft next year, whether it be as a perennial backup role or start is still to be determined. But I believe Brian Lewerke will be an NFL team by this time next year. If there was another thing that concerned me about MSU was the fact that they still don't have too much of an answer to how to settle up a good defense with no huddle tempo. You saw Utah State just torture them with it. Arizona State had early success with it, and you saw Indiana implement that as part of their comeback with it. So if you're some of these upcoming teams that have MSU in your schedule, i.e. Ohio State, i.e. Michigan, or i.e. Penn State, that is some interesting footage you can look at to use to your advantage because you have players and you can have, run certain plays, have some plays in your book here that could go well with a good no-huddle tempo offense. And if you want to do that, you can really set your players up to really wear out that defense the entire game with it. And then it'll just lead to better and brighter, things for you winning the game. So MSU still needs to find a better way to answer that tactic. Otherwise, it could get very disconcerting in big games. And as for the remaining schedule, aside from those opponents I just mentioned, it's still a good chance for MSU to have a very productive season. No, they're more than likely not making the playoff or even winning the Big Ten, but they can still have a good solid year along to correspond with the 10-win season that they had after the infamous 3-9 year. So the more than likely won't get the 10 wins, probably like a good 8 or 9. That kind of season's still on the table here, especially with Michigan coming up shortly soon. It'll be interesting to see how they'll look by then and then how they'll look afterwards.
Yeah. Buck?
You look at Michigan State, and the optimist in you says that they opened the playbook, did some things that they weren't accustomed to, were able to effectively salt the game away when it finally mattered. They got off to a quick start, which is what I pointed to earlier in our preview last week. They needed to get off to a quick start, and the pick six definitely helped jumpstart that. And they were able to use that to propel themselves to a victory. The cynic view of this is that Brian Lewerke threw 2 interceptions that helped stoke an immediate comeback. They weren't able to do what they wanted to do on offense, which is go ahead and play some power football and do what they normally do to control the clock and draw out those long games to make them shorter and let their defense kind of take over from there. I think that if you're Michigan State, you kind of have to be worried because it took a fake field goal and a jet sweep to get you some of your touchdowns, 2 of those, and you had another touchdown that was a defensive touchdown. So those are some things that, again, when you're playing teams that aren't Indiana, you're going to have to be able to rely on some of your bread and butter plays if you want to be able to beat those opponents face up, because you can't run jet sweep every time. You can't run a fake field goal a bunch of times. I mean, these are things that are still generally concerning about the Michigan State offense. Brian Lewerke had an uneven performance in my estimation. He did have 2 touchdowns with 200-plus yards, but he also, like I said, had those 2 picks. And I just don't know if that's a good enough performance for Michigan State to finally get its way back towards being a contender for the Big Ten title. Their next 2 games should be, again, by any estimation, a layup. They have Central Michigan coming in next weekend, or this weekend, I should say, and then Northwestern the weekend after that. So you look for improvement, and that's what happened with Michigan State, is they were able to improve upon their last performance from 2 weeks ago when they lost to Arizona State. But at the same time, like I said, I mean, they're relying on a lot of smoke and mirrors at times to be able to be an effective offensive team. And that's something that you've got to be worried about heading into some of these games against the likes of Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. So we'll see what happens this week against Central. It's not going to be a true barometer of their success, I think, or their improvement, because Central is not a very good football team.
No.
And
even though they won.
You should be able to handle that team with relative ease. Same thing with the Northwestern. This is the kind of thing that when you look at those games, you're looking to improve your offensive performance. And by that, I mean, I don't expect Michigan State to be running a lot of, I don't want to say trick plays when you're talking about jet sweep, but I mean, a lot of outside of the norm for them. And so this Indiana team was going to give them trouble. Michigan State kind of let them back in the game more than Indiana earned its way back into the game, I would say, because of the turnovers. And the defense was forced in the second half to play on its heels a little bit because of that. They finally were able to salt the game away with that last touchdown by Jalen Naylor. But this was a performance that for Michigan State, you felt like after the 14-0 lead got put up on the board, they should have been able to handle Indiana with ease, and that's not what happened. Those are the type of games that a 14-0 lead, especially that early in the first quarter, you're looking at winning that game, 42-7, 45-17, something like that. Instead, they let Indiana hang around, and their offense kind of stagnated, and it wasn't until late that they were able to finally break through with a 75-yard touchdown run to make that game theirs. So, I'm not trying to look at this through my Michigan fan-colored glasses. I'm trying to look at them through my analyst-colored glasses, if you want to call them that. I wasn't necessarily impressed with Michigan State, but I think that they did enough to win, and that's an improvement over what they did last time because they weren't able to do enough to win when they played Arizona State. And so, you're talking about a team that had a bye week, a full 2 weeks to prepare for Indiana, who defensively has improved over the years, but still is not a strong team on that side of the football. And it really took some work for you to be able to put up 35 points, 14 of those through what I would call non-traditional touchdowns, the fake field goal and the pick six. So they battled Indiana's offense, in my estimation, to a stalemate because of that. And that's got to be a little bit worrisome because, again, you're playing Penn State, you're playing Michigan, you're playing teams that actually have some talent on that defensive side. Those are things that aren't going to happen as much. So I think that when you look at these next two games on the schedule, Michigan State has to be able to get back to basics, impose its will using the offensive scheme that they prefer. And if that can happen, then you can start to think a little bit more positively about that. But right now, especially with the way Michigan looked in their game, these are games that tell you, are you where you're supposed to be? Michigan right now is probably a little bit farther ahead offensively than Michigan State is. And I think defensively, Michigan is a little bit ahead of where Michigan State is at. That doesn't mean that they're going to be able to beat Michigan State. That doesn't mean that they're going to get out there. When it comes time for them to play, Michigan State's not going to improve. But I think that this win over Indiana is kind of fool's gold if you want to take this as a resurgence compared to what they were not able to do 2 weeks ago, and that's win a football game. So these next two games, even though they're not important in terms of where they're needing to be, you're talking about success when you measure yourself against the elite teams that you're going to face. You really think that Michigan State hopefully can get back into the film room and the practice field and start to hammer home some of these concepts that they've been able to use in Dave Warner's offense for the past couple of years, because jet sweeps and fake field goals aren't going to cut it against Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. You're going to have to play them face up. You're going to have to do some things that you want to be able to do, control that line of scrimmage, run the football effectively. And again, if you can't do that, it's going to be a hard game. And Michigan State's defense, I think, played well. Like I said, they were put on their heels by the offensive for a spell there in the second half, and they were able to, I guess, stem the tide. But Indiana got within a score of them, and that's just not something that you're looking for. Like I said, that 14-0 start to me should have translated into a very easy win. Instead, Michigan State turned it into an exercise that lasted almost the entire 60 minutes, and that's not, I would say, uplifting. And again, I'm not trying to look at this as a Michigan fan. I'm trying to look at it as an analyst. And I like I said, I wasn't wholly impressed. They did some good things, but again, you're talking about a team that you should have been able to walk over, especially with the start that they had. That should have been a real easy game for them, and it didn't turn out that way. So Michigan State is fortunate to get out with a win because that's what your goal is. It doesn't really matter how pretty or how well you played as long as you get that W. But if you're looking at how that's a barometer towards your performance later in the season, Michigan State still has some work to do. And they're going to have to hope that there's some more consistency in the offense going forward, because if they don't get it, it's going to be very tough to beat some of those teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Michigan State is home against Central Michigan Saturday at noon on FS1.
Central Michigan Chippewas football.
Like I mentioned before, they won the Chippewas 17-5 over Maine. Their defense did a better job, but their offense still has proved that they need a lot more work. Tommy Lazzaro threw a touchdown pass, but that's been it. Just not much offense against a very terrible team in the Maine Orano Black Bears, who came into that game undefeated against after beating even easier teams. They went into Central Michigan, lost by 12. Central Michigan was struggling offensively still, whether it be with Tony Poljan or Tommy Lazzaro, and they were lucky enough to get a win. Their defense bailed them out by doing their job. So, Ed, any homework on that?
Yeah, basically the running game was, again, it was a much needed win against a cupcake of a team. It was one of their only few bright spots to get a win and to avoid potentially an entire winless season. So they needed to do what they needed to do, but still, this was not a pretty game by any measure. I mean, look at the score itself, and when you see some of the stats, oh my goodness. The running game almost got to 100 yards. That's one positive, probably the only positive you can say about that. But, yeah, this is just a showcase of how bad this team is. And I'll be honest, if MSU doesn't blow this team out by 30 points, I'll be highly disappointed.
Yeah.
Buck?
Yeah, I'll echo the sentiments of that. I mean, this is a game that, regardless of the stature of the records, this is a Division I AA team. I know it's FCS, but I'm old and I'm not going to change. So it's 1 AA team. Central Michigan, even though they have struggled mightily on the offensive side of the football, you would figure that a Division I football bowl, subdivision, whatever you want to call it, team should be able to have a better performance against a team like Maine. You only get 17 points on the board, and even though your defense steps up to the task and holds serve against a team that you really should be able to do that against, the offensive struggles really were still highlighted in this game, and you're going to have a tough time beating a lot of, if any, conference opponents if you can't move the football against a 1 AA team at home. So this is going to be a really struggling time, I would say patience testing year for Central Michigan. And I don't think anything was done last Saturday to dispel that notion. It's going to be a tough sled. They have Michigan State coming up, as we've mentioned. That is going to be really just kind of hold on by your fingers and hope you don't lose by 50 type of game, I think, for Central. They haven't shown me anything offensively that makes me think that they're going to be able to compete with the likes of Michigan State. And after that game, game, which is pretty much a sure loss. They play Buffalo with Tyree Jackson, the former Mona Shores product. That's going to be a tough game for them. And you look at the schedule, it doesn't get much easier for them, especially looking at their past performances. I mean, you're talking about a team that has scored a total of 53 points, of 70 points over 4 games. And bump up there, so 70 points over 4 games. That's not a prolific offense by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
And their defense is not a team that you can do that to. That's not a unit that you can depend on to hold your opponents to 12 points or less. That's just not going to happen. So it's going to be a struggle for Central, and I don't think there's going to be many happy campers after this game against Michigan State. I will say that historically Central Michigan has always played the Spartans relatively tough, dating all the way back to when I was a wee young kid in elementary school when they beat them twice out of 3 games. But boy, it's just hard to imagine Central Michigan being able to get off the schneid this week against the Michigan State team, who, although they're not firing all cylinders, should be able to handle them with relative ease.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you got this.
Western Michigan Broncos football.
The Western Michigan Broncos beat the Georgia State Panthers on the road 34-15. Another easy team for the Broncos, who improved to 2-2. Ed? Any homework there?
Yeah, it's a good showcase for the 2 running backs, Bulgan and Bellamy. Those 2 combined, I believe, had over 250 yards rushing. It was a good, again, after the tough opening to their schedule, Syracuse and Michigan, Western finally getting some good, much alleviated pressure. And you're going to see some of that more so. You saw that again last week. You saw it again here. You may see that a couple more times now, times 2, especially when we get later on in conference schedule. But with that Eastern game coming up, it could be a very interesting crossroads throughout their season will go, with that remaining on their schedule.
Yeah. They're home. They're at Miami, Ohio this upcoming Saturday. Buck, your analysis on Georgia State.
Well, I mean, the quick and dirty is that Western Michigan did what they set out to do. I mean, they had a very high run-to-pass ratio. They ran the ball 43 times, only passed it 25. The stats are kind of misleading when you look at it that way, because John Washington had 3 touchdown passes. But the focal point of the offense was clearly the running game. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards, Bogan and Bellamy, both over 100 yards. And they did what they set out to do, batter the defensive front of the Georgia State line. And when they got close, let John Washington throw. And so that's kind of how the game went. This is not a result that was surprising to me. And as you said, I mean, you're looking further down the schedule. They have Miami of Ohio this week, and then you have that Eastern game. And then it really becomes kind of a watershed moment for them in this season, because right now they're 2-2, 2 losses against Power 5 teams and 2 wins against relatively easy opponents. And now they're heading into the conference schedule, and it gets real very quickly for them with the game against Eastern. So, if they hope to somehow sniff the 500 mark, they're going to have to pull out that game against Eastern. Miami of Ohio, when you look at them coming in, Miami of Ohio, not a strong entry by any stretch of the imagination. They're 1-3, and their offense has been lackluster in a couple of games. I mean, they had 28 points against Marshall in the opener, but then were shut out, and then got only a field goal against Minnesota before winning last weekend against Bowling Green. So this is kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team when it comes to offense. And Western defensively, I think that when they've been tested, they've shown a lot of weaknesses and have proven to be pretty porous when you're talking about what their performances have been like. And again, you're looking at the last 2 games they played, Delaware State and Georgia State, giving up a combined 15 points. We're not talking about them playing Penn State or Michigan State or really anybody in the elite conversation. So this is going to be a difficult season for Western as well. Like I said, said, if they think that they have a chance at making even a little bit of noise in the MAC, these next 2 games are going to be very important, because if they can beat Miami of Ohio and then somehow get some performance that allows them to beat Eastern, then they can start to think about some success. But if that doesn't happen, it's going to be a long year in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Eastern Michigan Eagles football.
Same for the Eagles, who just could not hold on to their late lead 20-17. They lose 23-20 in overtime. In the overtime period, they throw an interception and they give up the game-winning field goal. Just another loss for one of our teams on the West Coast. Ed, just disappointing.
Yeah, it was very disappointing when you consider the fact that this is a team that beat Purdue early on in the season. This is a team that had the big win against Rutgers last year, and this was with the lead that they had, to see them just dwindle it away and then just lose in overtime in the fashion that they did was disappointing. It was the even game throughout, but it was just decided by those costly mistakes that they made. And when you have a game of 2 halves, essentially, when your offense explodes from 21 points in one quarter, but then don't do jack squat the rest of the game, that's very troubling. It was quite disconcerting how inefficient their offense was. And they got to find a way to tone that up, because they got Western coming up. That's another big game on their schedule, as well as other teams in the rest of the MAC. So they can't ill afford to let this one game help set the tone that might cause their season to disintegrate. Not right now. This is a critical time for them to still remain focused and with their goals still ahead of them.
Buck?
Yeah, I mean, this is a surprisingly inept performance by Eastern Michigan. Now, San Diego State will take you back through this. Arizona State beat Michigan State in week 2. They then travel to play San Diego State and collapse in the fourth quarter, end up losing that game. So Eastern coming in now, you think that, okay, they had a good win against Purdue. They were shaky in their MAC opener against Buffalo, which ended up in a 7-point loss. This was a game that if they could come out and pull this off, they'd be 3-1 going into the MAC schedule, and they could really look at doing some things. But unfortunately for them, they just weren't able to put a consistent 60 minutes together. Yes, they scored in every quarter, but it was a struggle. And San Diego State is a very competent defensive team, but Eastern Michigan really made some mistakes that set them back and ended up being one of the reasons that they lost this football game. You look at how this game took shape, and again, they go with a 2-headed quarterback, Glass and Wiegers. When you have 2 quarterbacks, the old saying is you don't have any. And I think it still holds true. They're trying to mix and match the best they can, but they just didn't have enough to pull ahead and end up beating San Diego State. This is a real tough loss for them, because they now head into the schedule, or the real tease of their schedule at 2-2. As you mentioned, the game this week coming up against Northern Illinois. That's going to be a test for them. And then they have Western on the schedule. So this is where it starts to get real for a lot of football teams. When you start heading into October, that's when everything starts to be amplified. And you're playing Northern Illinois, who's a perennial front runner in the MAC. And then you have Western, one of your biggest in-state rivals. So this is a time for Eastern right now, because they have failed quite miserably in building the momentum off that big win at Purdue. You would think that would be something that would propel them to maybe a season that most people weren't expecting. Instead, it could just be an awkward footnote in an otherwise unsuccessful season. So these are going to be critical games for this team moving forward. And it starts with Northern Illinois. The one thing they have the advantage of is it's at home. It's at Anderson Stadium. So if they can pull out that victory on the gray turf, that could give them some boost in morale and momentum heading into that away game at Western on October the 6th.
Yep. Eastern home against Northern Illinois Saturday at 6. Western at Miami, Ohio Saturday at 3:30. Both are going to be on the ESPN app on ESPN Plus, which takes us to our returning segment.
Time now for the college football and the Mitten Quick Picks.
College football in the Mitten quick picks. We'll start with number 14 Michigan at Northwestern, Saturday at 4:30 on Fox. Ed, we'll start with you.
Yeah, the cupcake portion continues being munched upon. Michigan will, doesn't matter if it's a road game or not, Michigan will still dismantle Northwestern. I see a score of probably not another 50 burger, but probably another 40 spots. So give me 42-21 Michigan.
Buck.
Michigan has traditionally struggled in Evanston when they've had good teams, when they've had bad teams, and everything in between. I think that this is another one of those games where I think that this is a game that they may take lightly, especially heading into the beef of their schedule. Maryland up after this game, and then the teams that are so-called elite, starting with Wisconsin and Penn State and all those guys. So I think that Michigan is improving. I think this is one of those games that they're going to win, and it's going to be unimpressive, kind of like the Michigan State game was this week. I'm going to go with Michigan 31 and Northwestern 10.
All right, I'm going to be fair and go with Michigan 35, Northwestern 17. Now, Central Michigan at Michigan State, number 21. I've got a spread of my own. Michigan State. I'm gonna say Michigan State 45, Central Michigan 10. Buck.
Central Michigan barely was able to get offense going against Maine. That's really all you need to know about this. They haven't been able to get anything going offensively throughout the entire season. Michigan State is by far the best defense they will face up to this point, and maybe all season. I think this is going to be a real struggle. The only thing that you can hang your hat on is that Michigan State probably doesn't feel the need to exert itself to its fullest, and maybe you can take advantage of that in some way. But Michigan State, I feel defensively is going to be able to keep them under wraps for the better part of the game. I don't see anything outside of a fluke play that Central Michigan is going to be able to score with, just based on what their performance has been over the last 4 games. I'm going to go with Michigan State 38 and Central 6.
All right, Ed? Ed? Hey, Ed, are you still there? What's your pick on Michigan State and Central Michigan? Oh.
Maybe he dropped out. His phone was having some problems earlier.
Yeah, hang on a second. Let me try to get him here.
So, well, we can come back to that too.
Yep, Yep. Ed, are you there? Eddie! Ed, come on.
Hello.
Yep.
Select technical issue here.
Yep. All right. What's your prediction on CMU at MSU?
Yeah, I expect the massacre to be coming along here. CMU has virtually no shot. My only question is, can MSU blow it out by 30 points? I think they have the tenacity and the effectiveness to do so. So I'd say MSU 49, Central 14. Okay.
Central with 2 touchdowns and no field goals, huh?
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
All right. Western Michigan at Miami, Ohio. Ed, we'll start with you again.
I see this one being another close one down to the wire, but I think Bogan and Bellamy will continue to help carry the load for them. That will prove to be the difference. I say Western in a close one, 28-24.
Miami, Ohio?
Yeah. 2024 Western over Miami, Ohio.
Oh, okay. Buck?
This is kind of a coin flip game for me. Western has beat up on lesser opponents the last 2 weeks. I think that trend may continue as far as the running game goes. The question is, can their defense hold on enough against Miami of Ohio? Miami of Ohio, like I said, has proven to be pretty inconsistent offensively. We'll see what team shows up for them on Saturday. I'm going to go with Western 27 and Miami of Ohio 20.
All right. I'm gonna go with Western 23 and Miami, Ohio 17. Now, last but not least, Northern Illinois and Eastern Michigan. Ed, we'll start with you one last time.
Unfortunately, I just don't see things working out or getting better for Eastern. I think they'll put up a close fight here, but I think they're starting. Their spirit is starting to wilt away little by little, and I think you're going to see Northern Illinois continue the disappointment here. So I say Northern Illinois 35, Eastern 24.
Buck?
I've already talked about it a little bit, but the momentum that they gained in that Purdue win has flagged considerably. Northern Illinois, like I said, is a perennial top dog in the MAC. The only advantage that Eastern Michigan has is they're playing at home. I just don't think that's going to be enough. I'm going to go with Northern Illinois 34 and Eastern 20.
All right. I'm going to go with Northern Illinois 35 and Eastern Michigan 21. Blackjack. All right, so that's our college football and the Mitten quick picks. Now we transition to pro football and the Detroit Lions of all teams.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
The Detroit Lions beat the New England Patriots 26-10. Yeah, on Sunday Night Football on NBC.
Holy jumping!
Man, the Patriots came into that game 1-1. The Lions came into their game 0-2. The Patriots offense looked very shaky in the first half. So did their defense. The Lions took advantage of big holes. The Patriots were not able to stop the run. The Lions scored 2 touchdowns, including a 33-yard touchdown catch by Marvin Jones Jr. in the third quarter after the Patriots got their first touchdown. Kerryon Johnson was really laying it up for Detroit. 101 rushing yards. That's the first time the Lions have had a 100-plus yard rusher since Thanksgiving of 2013 when the Lions shelled the Packers 45-14, I think I remember, when I saw that game with Reggie Bush being the Lions' tailback. Man, Kerryon Johnson was on fire. Matthew Stafford only threw the 1 interception, but he did much better. The Lions played a much better game than they did the first 2 games against the New York Jets and at the San Francisco 49ers. And Ed, when you guys were watching that game, you were telling me off the air that you were stunned to see all that transpire. What's your say on that?
Well, I use the word stunned because really going into this game, it was one of the last things I expected to see. I did not expect to see the Lions to, A, control the time possession as well as they did, B, be the one that didn't make the more of the noticeable mistakes, and C, have a more balanced offensive attack than the team that features the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. Now, on that last part of the offense, I was not expecting this type of strategy, this type of game plan, this type of execution. I think finally, maybe it was a combination of, hey, this is Matt Patricia's literally his old unit. He knows the ins and outs. Some of the players are still there. He knows that system like he knows the back of his hand. He kind of gives them hints, hey, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, this is what we can use against them. Or it could be the simple fact that finally Jim Bob Cooter is finally getting an understanding that teams are not going to let Stafford throw the ball deep on them whenever they can. That's why they're going to constantly have safeties two back or give safety help over the top in one form or fashion. So you follow the old cardinal rule of taking defense against you in this game. That's exactly what Jim Bob Cooter did. Whether it be using run plays, to get short intermediate gains to set up eventual play action passes, or at the very least, get you into at least much more better third down situations to where you You have to throw. You don't throw it too long. You can perform short, quick throws. The issue of short, quick throws, you saw Matthew Stafford doing more of those, getting it out of his hand, getting the ball out of his hand in 4 seconds or less to avoid the possibility of protection breaking down and sack happening. Because this offensive line, the way it has been retooled, I think it works better primarily when they're run blocking as opposed to pass protection, especially when you see with Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, and TJ Lang. The way they performed in opening up holes and sealing and producing sealing blocks was quite phenomenal. So they're much more better suited to help establish the run game than they are with protecting the passer. And that's not a bad thing, because with the running game, with a well-established running game, you can help, again, play action pass comes up. Not to mention the fact that since New England was playing safeties deep and giving up everything underneath, instead of trying to force the ball to Marvin Jones or Golden Tate, use the intermediate routes, use Kenny Galladay every once in a while. Use running back PA passes and downs out of the backfield. It was nice to see Stafford, not usually resort to gunslinger mode, even though he tried it once. It came back to bite him, but still, other than that, Stafford was much better, had a much better performance here than certainly the last time than he did at home against the Jets, especially. And that one also was on national TV, so much better national TV outing for Stafford, and also for Stafford, the fact that more than likely, when the season is over, it'll be at least another notched win against a team that finished with a winning record, because he only had 6 wins of that caliber total in his entire, now entering his 10th season of his career up until that point. You would assume the Patriots, as while the narrative, the media loves to push out that there's, the Patriots, there's soap opera drama going on. They're going to love pushing that narrative instead of giving more credit to the Lions here. But should things hold out, and the Patriots at the very least have a winning record, if they don't make the playoffs, that'll be another notch on Stafford's record of how he does against teams of that caliber. So it's a much-needed win for his sake, and for his status. Back to the issue of the offense, it was so satisfying to see the running game work so well. Whether it was LeGarrette Blount setting up the early runs that brought up the easy third downs, or Kerryon Johnson just really coming to his own. And I am certainly of the belief that not only is Kerryon Johnson the best running back on this team, he should be the guy getting the bulk of the carries going forward. If not the end of next year, certainly at the end of this year, certainly by next season. He's been outstanding with his vision, his patience, his ability to not instantly go down at first contact, and shifty movement as well. What else you could say? Like, for instance, when he had that edge, it was like a 3rd and 2, and he caught a swing pass out of the backfield. He used his edge speed to get to the distance what he needed to get the first down. That was pure hustle and effort. And you don't normally see that from Detroit running backs over the past few years. So it's good to see that in spades. So between all of that, it was a very successful night for the offense in terms of being a more well-balanced team, a healthy mix of run and pass plays. And I think moving forward, you're going to have to see this type of game plan being implemented more and more for this team to have sustained success throughout the game, and not having to rely on Stafford pulling something in for a quarter. Granted, you would still love to see these drives and touchdowns, but still the fact that you are getting points, there is consistent cohesion throughout these offensive drives throughout the course of the game. It leaves you confident that, hey, Jim Bob Cooter has the semblance to know of what he's doing here. When it came to the defense, I think that Matt Patricia would have his unit, his boys, up for this one especially. But I was well impressed with how the secondary looked. The fact that they did not, under any circumstances, let Rob Gronkowski, if the New England was going to beat him, it was not going to be with Rob Gronkowski. They were not going to do that. They would double him. They would sometimes triple him. They would have all the blanket coverage that you have on him to force Tom Brady to throw to someone else. And knowing the fact that guys like Julian Edelman or Denny Amendola are not there, and Brady having to use the players that's around him that you know for certain is not going to just be those difference maker type of players, it was much easier for the Lions to just blanket coverage Gronk the way they did, and that stifled New England. As well as another factor of them winning the time of possession battle, not just the fact that the Lions was able to establish the run, which in turn runs out clock, milks drives, but most importantly, keeps Tom Brady off the field so he can't do damage to you the way he usually does. And while there was some worry, of course, especially with the turnover by Stafford and then the touchdown by Brady to bring it back to a 3-point game. Seeing Stafford and the offense respond the way they did, that was so symbolic of something I'd never seen before, because usually when that happens, and everything collapses on its rear end. So to see Stafford not only drive back down, but also finally connect with Marvin Jones on the big play to get a touchdown, it was so satisfying and rewarding to see, but also encouraging to see that, hey, that could be the type of momentum shift, momentum change that this team, that this franchise has needed for a while to, wow, yes, it's one moment now, but if you look back, we're able to look back on this play, not necessarily the end of this season, but moments, but obviously time after that, back at this moment, it could be seen as a symbolic start to a bigger change. That's still yet to be seen, but if you're optimistic, you liked how that drive developed as a whole. It's also nice to see Matt Patricia finally get, that first win. It's nice to see, you look at some of the post-game footage, post-game locker video, the players seem to be reacting well around him, so maybe some of those reports of the team completely hating his guts might not be entirely true, or maybe there's at least a sliver of it that wasn't reported correctly. Who knows? This is still a long season, and we still got to see how the rest of these games play out. But still, it was nice to see the players rally around their coach instead of quitting on him. I mentioned the secondary. Darius Slay, it was nice to see him after missing last week due to a concussion come back in a big way. He had that big interception that helped seal up the win. Mm-hmm. Also, especially in terms of coming back, TJ Lang, he missed last week's game, and you saw how his return to the field last night proved to be a big difference as well. So those key components played a big factor in the Lions winning this game, as well as the Patriots missing some important players on the due to injury on their end as well. But still, in this game, it's next man up. You got to roll with the players on your depth chart and on your roster. And at the end of the day, you have number 12 as your QB, so you'd be in a lot worse spot than where you could be than a few guys being injured. But still, all in all, tremendous victory, much needed victory, not just this season, but for Matt Patricia's job, amongst other things. And when you look at this remaining schedule, at least for to finish out these first 5 games, the Cowboys look dreadful, the Seahawks look dreadful, and the Packers do not look like your usual Packers. Yes, there's Aaron Rodgers, but they do not look like that type of usual team that would frighten people. You saw what the Bears did to them. You saw how they struggled against the Vikings. And my goodness, you saw how they looked against Washington. So, while I am in no way or shape or form or fashion predicting that the Lions are going to somehow go 3-2 at the end of this 5-game stretch, it does look promising that they're not going to be 1-4. As looking at what the other teams on the upcoming schedule have looked so far. So, big win, needed win, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, their defense could do something in Dallas. Buck?
Yeah, I mean, not to belabor all the points that were made previously, I think the one thing I took away from this was I didn't know if I was supposed to be more shocked by how well the Lions played or how poorly the Patriots did. Some concerns still linger when you're talking about the Detroit Lions, simply because for all the bells and whistles that they showed on Monday Night Football, they still kicked 4 field goals. And against a team that they were really able to dominate at the line of scrimmage, it's still kind of disappointing. Not to take the shine off the win, but kind of like I said about the Michigan State team earlier in the broadcast, where it's great that they get this win. They're playing a Patriots team that traditionally in September, don't judge them in September, judge them in December. It's a big a statement win over a team that a lot of, I would say almost everybody was predicting them to lose and lose badly. So it's great for them to do that. And yes, it's great for them to have offensive success, especially the way they did it with Kerryon Johnson, who, if you haven't had a 100-yard rusher for 5 years almost, that's obviously a crowning accomplishment. The one thing I'll say is, I'll kind of echo the sentiments that Ed had about the running game. It was nice, if you're a Lions fan, to see them dominate that line of scrimmage, and even on the defensive side. The Patriots just could not get anybody untracked running the football. Sony Michel was absolutely brutal. They tried to run that third and short play to the right side, I think 3 times in the first half, and they got stuffed each and every time. And so the Patriots really, they really just had some struggles, but a lot of that was because of the defense and the way that the Lions played. I don't want to get much more in depth with it, because I think Ed hit a lot of the points that I was thinking. It really it's something for the Lions to now build upon that. This is what you have to do in the game of football. It's great to get wins. It's great to play well, but you have to be able to build on it. And we talked about the schedule before the Patriots.
Oh boy, are you still there, Buck? Wait a second. Anybody there? Hello?
I'm still here, Taylor.
Yep. Buck. Hey, Buck got cut off. We apologize for technical difficulties here.
While we're waiting,
hang on a second.
While we're waiting for Buck to come back, I'll hop on this point of how the Lions definitely need to build upon this. It doesn't mean that they're going to rip off a big stretch and they'll be contending for the division title, but they need something to feel good, because what we saw the past couple of weeks, I think, is back. Buck, you left us for a couple seconds there.
Yeah, don't know what happened there. The vagaries of the internet strike again. I'll still go back to what I was talking about before. This is something that they've got to build on, and if they can't build on it, then it really goes for naught, because it's a great win for them. It's something that needs to be a springboard, not a awkward footnote in their season. And if they can do so, then you can talk about what's going to happen from here on out. If they go right back to the tank and lose these next 2 games, then you can just say, well, why can't they play that way all the time? I mean, the NFL is a very strange and superfluous league. I mean, you look at the Bills yesterday, just smoking the Vikings. I mean, absolutely manhandling the Vikings, who nobody thought that would happen. The way the Bills had played in the first 2 weeks, the way the Vikings defense had played the first 2 weeks, I looked down at my phone and it's 27-0.
Oh my!
That just tells you what can happen in a week-to-week league like the NFL. And I think more than ever for the Lions now, this is the time to strike. I mean, they've got the momentum. They're playing some teams that probably are not where they want to be. We were talking about the Cowboys and the Seahawks, and time will tell. Football coaches will always tell you, enjoy the win for 24 hours and you got to get back to work. And that's exactly what has to happen here. The Lions cannot let this opportunity slip away, and they have to be able to build upon this. Otherwise, it's just going to be one of those things where, we had a terrible season. We beat the Patriots, but we still had a terrible season. And that can't happen, especially if you're Matt Patricia. This was a showcase game for him. This was a game that nobody thought they had a chance to win. They ended up doing a complete 180, dominate the game from start to finish. And if they can use that momentum, and we've talked about it a lot of times in this broadcast with other football teams being college, but still the principle remained the same, build upon momentum. If you can do that, then you're going to be able to use this as a springboard and point to this game as the time that they turned it around. If you can't do that, people are just going to look at it and say, boy, that was an odd week. Well, the Lions are still the Lions. So I'm not going to say that I wasn't impressed by the Lions because that would be disingenuous. At the same time, this is one win, and there are 16 games, and the way that they looked in the first two games is not erased by what they did yesterday. It's mildly soothed. It is putting some of those concerns to bed. But if they come out next week against the Cowboys and somehow lay an egg, everybody's going to be right back to they're 1-3. They look terrible. Where is this team headed? So I think the most important game is always the next one. And this is true in this case, just like it is in any other.
Right. It was a bizarre week 3, and it ends with the Steelers beating the Buccaneers 30-27. But all in all, the Lions make a statement by beating the Patriots of all teams. The Bills shell the NFC runners-up, the Vikings, on the road in Minnesota. And Clay Matthews making what looks to be a legal tackle to me, and gets flagged for roughing the passer while Alex Smith had the ball, and they let the penalty stand. Things are going haywire, and Clay Matthews calls the NFL soft for doing that. I don't blame him, but you can't throw your entire body weight on a quarterback, except for when he has the ball. But still, the Lions are at the Cowboys, who apparently lost to the Seahawks. And the Lions go to Dallas Sunday at 1 on Fox. And guys, it's time to make a prediction here, but not without analysis. Ed, we'll start with you.
This Cowboys team does not look very good at all to me. With the departures, obviously, of Chris Bryant and Jason Witten, Jerry Jones not doing anything to help establish an upgrade or a good job of replacing the production of a wide receiver. The offensive line not looking very good at all. And Dak Prescott just starting to showcase more and more that maybe his rookie season was a one-hit wonder. Even though, you have good players here on the offense, also good players on the defense, especially the defensive line. Secondary not been very good. And I think, it always seems to be like whenever Stafford plays the Cowboys in Cowboy Stadium, he has a good game of sorts. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the usual case here. I'm going to be preemptive and say the Cowboys will find a way to win because the Lions, it's not always a guarantee that they do well in Dallas playing the Cowboys, no matter whether it's at Old Texas Stadium or now at the AT&T Stadium. But if the Lions win, I love it. But we're not in the emotions business. We're in the truth-telling business. So if we got to be honest, we got to be honest. And my honesty tells me the Cowboys are going to find a way to win this game. Close margin, but the score will be 30-26.
All right, Buck?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. 1 week is not a season, mate. And for all the good things that the Lions did last week, that could go away. Now, I'm not saying it's going to.
Get closer to the mic.
The Cowboys are kind of in the same spot. They're a team that expected to do more. And after that opening week win against the Panthers, have struggled severely. And this is really a tale of two teams that are looking for a kind of a must-win, because if the Lions don't win this game, they'll be 1-3, and everybody will kind of forget that Patriots win. If the Cowboys win, if the Cowboys lose, there'll be a lot of questions being asked in Dallas about what's going on with that team. Is Jason Garrett going to be able to survive the year? So, every game in the NFL is big, But when you look at the scope of what's going on with each team, both of these teams are going to have to dig deep and try to come out with a victory. I would say the one thing, obviously, that the Dallas Cowboys have going for them is they're playing it at home. But just the way they've looked the last 2 weeks has not been promising. And you have a team like the Lions that are coming off a big win. As we've learned, momentum is definitely something that is a pretty variable and kind of an unidentical commodity in the NFL this year. So I'm going to go with the Lions winning this game. It should be close. I think that they'll be able to pull this out. I think I'm going to go with the Lions 20-24 and the Cowboys 20.
My.
Yeah. Yeah, very good analysis on that prediction, Buck. I'm gonna go with the Lions 20 and the Cowboys 17. The Lions apparently are going to keep settling for field goals, but the way their defense played against New England, they keep bringing the blitz. If they keep bringing the blitz against the Cowboys offense, the Lions have a shot. 20-17 Lions. So,
appreciate the optimism, guys, but it's I've seen this story one too many times. Hence my hesitation in picking them to win this one.
Well, I mean, it stands to reason. I mean, the Lions have not given fans a lot of hope for continued success, and this is not one of those times where you want to start drinking the Kool-Aid because that's when people get burned. So it's understandable. I just think the Cowboys, with the way they've looked the last 2 weeks, they just are struggling to find their identity right now. Zeke Elliott is having a terrible year. It's just been a mess ever since that opening week victory against the Panthers. And, who's to say that doesn't continue? But as we've seen, like I said, in the NFL, it's a week-to-week business. And 1 week you're on top of the world, the next week you're dog meat. So, we just kind of have to wait for the game to be played.
Yep. All right. So that covers all our teams. And now we get into our 5 questions segment.
It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast.
Question number 1. Could Ken Holland actually be replaced by Steve Yzerman as the Red Wings general manager next year? Ed?
Well, you learn to never say never in any type of business or any type of situation. In terms of being replaced by Yzerman as the general manager, I could see it happening. I'm not entirely certain how it will come about and what would be the parameters of the discussion or of the agreement of this term. Would it be involved of Yzerman signing on but still waiting one more season for Holland to finish out his contract, or Holland, saying he'll play out the last year of his contract but in a kicked-up promotion, which would bring this whole story full circle in so many ways? Or could it be a potential where Holland announces instead of finishing out his last year, he's going to resign anyway, which of course would be the pendulum wheel opening for Yzerman to after serving his last year with Tampa, he could immediately walk right back in and now just be general manager for the Wings. It's just interesting to know. It's just interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but it's still a case of how will it come out, and you still want to keep an eye out and see it unfold to really understand how this might all come about. I'm sure we're all having pie in the, when people were saying, Michigan, they're in the run to get Harbaugh, people thought of that as pie in the sky too. But then when that actually came to fruition, people were taken aback. So I think we can use that as an alliteration as a lesson of, hey, it seems to be, more pipe dream, but again, wherever there's smoke, there is fire.
Buck?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes, we're going to talk about this in further questions, but, I mean, could he? Yeah, absolutely. Will he? It remains to be seen. And I really belabored this point earlier in the show. Until it happens, I'm not confident it will, because we have to see it happen. So, would I like it? Yes, I would. But there's a lot of things that I'd like that don't happen. So, I'm going to wait and see. The answer to this is, if you had the Magic 8 Ball, it would be, wait and see. And that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. We are going beyond speculation, so the answer of will be is of will he or not. It is yet to come soon, but could he is the question. I would say yes. So,
Next question.
Question number 2: if Steve Yzerman is hired and Chris Ilitch is still the owner, how could those two work together at this point of time? Ed, we'll start with you again.
Yeah, that would be a real interesting side story and storyline to watch out, because but we alluded to this earlier about reports saying, there being a handshake deal already in the well.
Hey, Buck, you're interfering here. Go ahead, Ed.
Just over a week ago, there was a tweet sent out by Justin Spiro. Anyone who's heard of Spiro before knows how usually some of his sources have been reliable, given how he worked within the Detroit sports drag, amongst other news reports in the Detroit sports world. He even has his own website, Spiro Avenue, I believe, or his own platform where he gives news and opinions and whatnot. He sent out in a tweet over a week ago that apparently a handshake deal has been arranged to where after the end of next season, Steve Yzerman will be named the next general manager of the Red Wings. Now, I don't know how in the world that's going to work out, and even if a sliver of that comes true and all that comes to fruition, wouldn't that be used as potential evidence in terms of a tampering hearing? That would be my main concern and takeaway from that tweet. Not so much stop peddling.
Buck, you're interfering again. Yep.
I'm on mute, guys.
Okay, thanks.
That's okay. I was just about to finish anyway.
Yep. But Buck?
Yeah, the same goes for the last question. Until it happens, who knows what it's going to look like. For people saying that there's a handshake deal, for all the things that we've been told, Steve Yzerman doesn't want to work for Chris Ilitch.
Nope.
And until that happens, I'll continue to go along with that train of thought. So, how they would work together, I think that Chris Ilitch, if he brings him on, is basically going to be swallowing his pride and saying that regardless of our past differences, I need this team to be successful for me to make money. And we all know that Chris Ilitch's end game is the financial bottom line. So when it comes to that, I think that even if it's an uneasy alliance, it would be something that would be out of necessity. And I think that if he could stay out of Steve Yzerman's way, that's why you're bringing him on. If you want me to do the job and you're going to hire me to do the job, let me do the job. And I think that's kind of how it would stand.
Yeah. So,
next question.
That brings us to question number 3. Since Chris Ilitch is still selling the Red Wings along with the Tigers, according to Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag from 2017, March 8th, and he still will, what owner should and could Steve Yzerman work with next? Ed?
Well, it's still out in the open because we don't entirely know who the potential short list could be of those that might be interested in wanting to buy the team. We don't know if it's going to be a package deal to where, say, the Ilitches might sell the team, both the Wings and the Tigers, to Dan Gilbert, or another firm or another team from a different city. They just want to buy the Red Wings separately. Whoever it is, it would seem more to fit in the region of, hey, Yzerman is more than willing to come, go to work for a different owner as opposed to Chris Ilitch, who he has issues with. So that would be the general line of thought. but as in terms of who the actual candidate might be, it's still an open-ended whirlwind of a question here.
Buck?
Yeah, I mean, these are all three questions that are structured upon the premise of Yzerman coming back. So the first one is we don't know if he's going to. If he's going to come back to Detroit to assume a role in the organization. If you're talking about who could buy the team, which is really the drill down that this question gets to, Dan Gilbert's been mentioned a couple of times. Outside of that, there hasn't been a lot of information that's been disseminated about who could possibly buy the team. Dan Gilbert doesn't have a great history with general managers at Cavaliers, Cleveland, for that history. So if somebody's going to buy the team, I think that it would happen knowing that they're going to have full reign of who they hire. And everybody knows that when a new owner or a new general manager comes in, they're going to clean out and clean house and get the people that they want to have in there. There's a reason that there's somebody getting fired, and there's a reason that somebody else is coming in, and that's because you're not having success. And a lot of that is support personnel, whether if it's their fault or not. I mean, they're going to have to look for new jobs. And so, I mean, people that are under the impression that Steve Yzerman is going to be the general manager of the Red Wings, that's all fine and dandy. But that means that he's going to have a new coaching staff, probably. He's going to have new scouts. He's going to be putting people in there that he trusts, not just coming to run the Red Wings and the good old boys network that Ken Holland left behind. So, all of that said, if there's an owner coming in that's going to be getting a Steve Yzerman-led team or has the promise of a Steve Yzerman-led franchise, he's going to have to sign off on all of those as well. And whoever it be, whether it be a group of people or a single person, I don't know who that would be, but they're going to have to sign off on all these things that are happening because owners typically don't buy teams that are very good. They typically buy teams that people are trying to get rid of them because they're distressed properties. So that all said, whoever buys the team, if that were to happen, they may have different ideas of where that franchise needs to go. So it's a very tough question to answer because until we're presented with more possibilities other than Dan Gilbert, it's hard to compare. And so I would say that if somebody is going to buy the team and it's going to be a new owner, it could be all sorts of different things that happen. And not all of those are guaranteeing that Steve Yzerman is going to be the general manager.
Yeah. Ed, you touched on Steve Ballmer quite some time ago. Any news on him?
Not really. It was just a feeler of a name I threw out due to local connections. But I'm not entirely sure if he will be interested in owning the Red Wings.
Right. Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that one.
Next question.
Transitioning to the Lions, question number 4. How can the Lions feed off their victory against the Patriots? Ed, we'll start with you again.
Well, whatever mentality that they use to go into this one, they need to bring that same mentality. More so, it could be one of no matter who is in front of them on that schedule, it may boil down to simple rah-rah rhetoric, but it is true. They put their pants on just like we do. Just because of what could be a logo on their helmet, or in this case, a star on their helmet, or what place could play out. Doesn't matter the fact that they got put out 11 guys on the field just like we do. They got to go out and execute just like we have to do. And it comes down to who's going to establish their will more. And if you come with that same mindset that you came in with this one, you're going to have another good shot to win this game, in my opinion.
Yeah. Buck?
Yeah, I mean, you're only as good as your last game, right? So right now, the Detroit Lions are viewed as a decent football team now that they've been able to beat the Patriots. And I would say at this point, the Cowboys coming off their last performance are not. But as we all know, the NFL takes twists and turns that nobody expects. And it's a lot more of a zero-sum game where you're talking about what you did last week versus what you did this week, because none of it really correlates. And all of that said, I think the way that they can performance they did on Monday night. They're coming off a short week, mind you, because they'll have one less day of rest, and they'll have some things on tape that the Cowboys can look at. The question is going to be, can the Cowboys do something to turn that around? And I just don't know if that's going to be possible. That's why I picked the Lions to win, because I just don't know if the Cowboys have it in them defensively to be able to turn that tide. Now, that doesn't mean the Lions can't come out and just lay an absolute egg. That doesn't mean that the Dallas Cowboys can't come out and be the same bad team that we saw last week. But what I can say is that if the Lions want to build on this, they have to do everything in their power to not let themselves get complacent and to let themselves have a false sense of security based on 1 week of football.
Yeah.
Next question.
Question number 5. How much room does the Lions offense have for improvement? Ed?
Loads of improvement. One game cannot be where you can look at it and say, oh, everything's all fixed now. No, it's not. Things still need to be a more consistent matter. Also, can ill afford to have big mistakes when they're in the middle of the drive, when they groove, have a rhythm, and then Stafford makes a dumb throw like he did the other night. That can't happen, especially against a team like the Cowboys, because you're going to be on the road instead of in your house here. The Cowboys will use that to feed off the energy of the crowd, and they'll make you pay for it, especially when you have an athlete like Zeke Elliott who can take any type of short pass or short run and gash you up the middle for 50 yards in an instant. So you can't make those kind of mistakes here. But other than that, I think really not too much of a way you can change up here, because it comes down to if you see mistakes repeat, try to establish a run in short-term immediate pass game. And if you see more man coverage, okay, then you can use that to open up the table a little bit more to establish kind of throws to get Stafford going, and then we'll see how it goes from there. Either way, you got to keep it trying to establish the run and more clock and time possession, because with a more balanced run attack, less pressure on Stafford, and more room for him to grow and develop.
Yeah. Buck? Buck, I can't hear you. Yep. I'm still hearing interference, and you're far away from the mic.
Yeah, well, my wireless just went down about 20 minutes ago, so I'm operating my phone down. That would be part of it. When we're looking at performance, just as I mentioned, they had 4 field goals. And if you want to win football games, those have to be touchdowns, at least half the time. And so it was a great win for the Patriots. The defense really drove it. I don't think the offense did lose the game.
Try to get at least closer.
That said, I think that when you're talking about what they're going to be able to do and what they're going to be able to improve on, it's going to be scoring in the red zone, because if they come down to a battle of field goals, typically that favors the home team. And that's something that if the Detroit Lions want to win, they have to avoid.
Yep. And that wraps up our 5 questions segment. So to our entire audience, if you want to answer those 5 questions, just replay that segment portion of this episode and answer them the best you can without going on a line. Now for the What's Your Grade segment.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
As always, we start off with Ed, and we're going to grade the Lions offense against the Patriots defense. 1 of 2, the second of which we're going to ad-lib. Ed, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, looking at how they performed all around, given the expectations coming into this, given the opponent expectations, and how they responded and how they executed, and just how they're able to just perform all around, I have to give them an A. I won't give them an A+ because there are still things that needed working out. The mistake throw by Stafford, not getting more touchdowns said they should have, but still, the fact that you had a 100-yard rusher, control of time of possession, and Stafford didn't get smacked around as often as he used to, as he is used to. It was just a tremendous performance by the offense as a whole. So my grade for the offensive unit would be an A, solid A.
Yeah, mine too. Buck, you'd have to agree with this one.
Not really. 4 field goals against a team that you're really dominating between the 20s. It still leaves a little bit to be desired. I'm going to give it a B. I'm going to give it a B plus because I like to see touchdowns, and if you don't get touchdowns, like I said, that is a long-term game that is hard to sustain. So they did some good things. They got a 100-yard rusher. I think that they did what they had to do. I think the fact that they weren't able to convert as many times as they should have with the way that they were dominating the Patriots, I'm not going to say it's a cause for concern. More likely, I'm going to say it's more disappointing. They were able to get the win because of the defense and how they played just as much as the offense. And I think that when you weigh all of those factors, a B plus for them because they were dominant up front. They were able to do what they wanted, but then when they got in the red zone, drives stalled out. And if you're going to be, A is a tough grade for me to give on an offense. I mean, I don't even think I'd give the Michigan offense an A grade from last week because they're playing a pretty inferior team. So I would say that a B plus here for me, just because the field goals are concerning. Because if you're playing a team and dominating them that much, you need to be able to put those balls in the end zone.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Buck on this one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. But interesting notes. Little not so fast, my friend. We've seen that twice now tonight. Interesting. Just different people.
Well, right, because he's got the analysis. You can't just keep selling for field goals, even if you're playing for the New England Patriots.
He's absolutely right here. I think the reason why my grade was an A, though, because, again, the expectations that we all thought this was going to be an absolute blowout, and then it turns out that the Lions were the ones that controlled the whole tempo of the entire game. Yes, I do agree. They still got work to do in terms of getting the touchdowns, but the fact that the main issue that they kept Tom Brady off the field, and they got a 100-yard rusher, and they protected their quarterback, to me, that was enough to warrant a good A. But still, they're coming around with the points that Buck himself brought up.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm going to give this an A minus, and I'm going to range it. I don't think I have a choice. So, the Lions' defense against the Patriots' offense. What's your grade on that, Ed?
This one should be. Hopefully, we get more agreement with this one along this line, but I'm going to go A as well. The fact that the time that we did see them on the field, it wasn't so getting. It wasn't like they're going in a shootout. They weren't giving up. They were having shutdown drives after every sport almost. They were able to get 3 and outs. They did not get beat down by the run game this time, as opposed to what they did against the Jets and against the 49ers, especially against the 49ers. And they were able to get a couple sacks on Brady. So it was good to see them continue the pace of what they did last week against San Francisco, which is getting some sacks on the QB, applying good pressure. And, of course, what else can you say but big play slay? So the defense gets an A for me on this one.
All right. It's all on you, Buck.
Well, this one I don't disagree with. You hold a team like the Patriots, even though they don't have Julian Edelman and they haven't got all of their cylinders clicking, to hold them to 10 points is really an effort that deserves to be commended. And I'll give them an A as well because the Patriots just could not get anything going almost all night. And the offense did help them out with some long drives and some ball control. But the Patriots, as we know from years of history with Tom Brady, they don't need much wiggle room to be able to blow games open, and they just never got that. And so I'm going to give the Detroit Lions an A because I would say that their defensive performance was even more dominating than what they were able to do on offense.
Especially the secondary. The secondary was just outstanding in terms of Because a couple of those sacks that you saw came about as a result of coverage, just excellent coverage. Even when Gronk was able to get some things, because listen, a guy his size, he's going to get his no matter what. But it didn't allow him to, for the New England in general, to take control of the game. This game was in full momentum control of the Lions virtually from start to finish. It was quite wonderful to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So, solid A from me to the Lions defense, an A- from me to the Lions offense. That's our What's Your Grade segment. So, for our audience, if they have a grade for those two events, post them in the comment bank in this episode, and please don't go out of line. Gentlemen, thanks very much. We'll talk again Sunday night at 10:30 for episode 336.
Very good. Looking forward to it. Great job, guys.
Yep, thanks. And that is episode 335 of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast Week in Review. Before we sign off, we want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media and have their friends share that as well, because we want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is searching for a wider online audience that is fans of sports, especially our teams in the state of Michigan. So please spread the word about the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, via iTunes, Google Play on its podcast app, and Spotify, as well as its verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, and its Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram accounts at Michigan_Truth. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at Instagram at DT2Phillips. Buck Gino on Twitter at BuckGino3, 3 I's for Roman numerals, and Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. We'll talk to you next week on episode 336. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. Stay smart, Michiganders. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them.
And mission complete.